Welcome to the West Coast Machine Learning meetup for Thursday, the 30th of November. So I thought we'd start tonight with kind of I'm calling it drama here with OpenAI. If anybody else has another word for it, feel free to inject in on that. And then we'll, after we do that, we'll go to their actual developer day they had, I think 1 or 2 days before they fired Sam Altman. So we'll just work a little backwards here in time. So I have a couple slides I put together, just kind of reading things. And, obviously there's still a lot of undetermined sort of what went on behind the scenes and things like that. I don't think we'll ever fully know, but it is what it is. Okay, so this kind of working from Friday the 17th is kind of at least my 2 cents on what happened here. We had Altman get fired, co-founder Greg Brockman, director of research and head of AI risk, and a whole bunch of other senior researchers quit. So that was pretty dramatic, as you can imagine. And apparently, even though Microsoft is one of their huge investors in the company, nobody in the board called up somebody at Microsoft and said, hey, we're going to do this. And so they got caught kind of unawares that was going to happen. At least that's my understanding. Somebody else knows otherwise, let me know. So they got caught unawares. And then by Saturday, Microsoft and other investors in OpenAI had decided that they wanted Altman back. Satya Nadella himself was personally involved. He's written some things about that. And so, that was, maybe the board members thought, gee, did we really kind of mess up here? What does that mean? On Sunday, I guess they had a series of meetings, and there's that famous photo of Sam Altman sitting with a visitor badge showing that he posted on Facebook or X or something like that. Anyway, on social media, looking pretty kind of hacked off at some people. So what happens then the remainder of the week? Well, Monday, as you guys probably know, Satya Nadella announced that Altman and Brockman are joining Microsoft, and Microsoft was definitely committed to a partnership with OpenAI, or at least some of its people. He has this comment here that they're looking at, and they were going to give them put them in charge of the new advanced research team. So they were going to create a segment, carve something out of the Microsoft ecosystem to put them in charge of. You can see his quote there. And then it got worse. By the end of the day, hundreds, and I believe it was like 80 or 90%. Correct me if anybody knows it. Was it over 90?
Over 90 is what I heard.
Yeah. Some large amount said, yeah, we're going to leave OpenAI and we're going to join Altman at Microsoft. And that included Leah Sutskever, which my understanding, he was one of the people that was working with the board kind of on the ouster deal. So that was a little bit interesting. Let's see. Okay. And then as of Tuesday and Wednesday, all of a sudden, Altman's back. Most of the old board is gone. We've got a new board in place. This new board includes Brett Taylor, who was co-CEO over at Salesforce. He had to drive across town to make that one. Larry Summers, who was the Treasury Director. Was he Clinton's? I don't remember. Clinton's? I don't remember who he was under. I wonder what And then the president of Harvard, and Adam D'Angelo, who is the Chorus CEO, and I guess he's a personal friend of Sam Altman's, and was the original CTO at Facebook. And then Microsoft has the 30th, what is that, today, a non-voting position on the board at OpenAI. Given the amount of money, that is not too surprising, I guess. Anybody have any comments, thoughts on that sort of stuff? That's where we're kind of at now. Okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, Jerry, I was going to say, I think and maybe you're going to go into it more, but Microsoft, I think the original intent of having the board was that there weren't financial incentives or priority for them. So Microsoft being on the board is kind of counter to that original vision, but non-voting, I guess so.
Yeah, but if you're in the meeting, whether you raise your hand, they ask you for your vote or not, you can influence the meeting, right? So
It might be a reasonable compromise.
Yeah, I guess if I had, what do they have, 20 billion or something invested or something like that, I'd want some at least advisory capacity. Yeah. So, okay. So that's kind of where we're at. Other thoughts, people? Things like that?
Did they announce if it was they were going to be named by today? Have they announced it? Do we know?
This is what I had as of, well, I think as of this morning. I don't know what other people have been put out, but you heard that they were going to announce the entire board by then? Is that what you're saying?
Or no, just on the slide to be named as of 11:30. So I just
who it was going to be, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything. If anybody else has heard anything, please make us smarter about this. Okay.
The other question, Jerry, I have, if anybody's heard, was, have we really heard what the original rationale was? Or what was there a trigger, or was it cumulative, or?
There's some theories, and I have a slide on the leading theory I've heard.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, and we'll go kind of through that because that fits probably more into our, original charter, which is, AI and machine learning, not boardroom drama type things, but, yeah. And, oh, darn it, S ruined it there on the Q star bit, but we'll go into Q star in a bit. And it's something I had never really heard of directly, but we'll go through it here in just a moment. All right, in fact, let's do it right now. Okay. Helen Toner, who is a former board member, put this out like a day ago or something like that. And you can read that, and if you can figure out what the rationale was from that, please clue us in, because I looked at this and I said, a lot of nice words, things like that, but there's been speculation, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what that means, There just doesn't seem to be, nobody's talking a lot about it.
Yeah, and I think people seem to be have read a lot about it. So there was, I think in the communication to employees, it said very explicitly, there's no malfeasance. It's not like he committed a crime or had some scandal. So it's like, okay, no scandal. You're not trying to slow him down. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
I mean, is that really true? They said that later, but super initially, and all I know is from Hacker News, right? Like everyone else, is they said that he was less than candid. I mean, they accused him of lying about something, I don't know what, but that's not nothing. Right?
Fair point. I just meant like they aren't saying that he stole money or that, he outside of work committed some crime and they were going to boot him on like, whatever grounds, what kind of person you are, you know what I mean? They're saying like, it was not that. So it was like you're saying, somehow work related, but not a, like lying to the board, miscommunication to the board, misleading, whatever, like you were saying, but not like an out and out, like he stole money, he cheated, he faked the taxes, whatever, you know.
Look, I mean, I wasn't there, but it seems to me that lying to the board is actually super high up on the list of bad things that a CEO can do. It depends on your point of view, but that is definitely my point of view.
I suppose I've been in the corporate world long enough that, like, you know, you're not telling the whole truth to the board.
Right.
You're not supposed to outright lie, like the numbers can't be fabricated, but there's a lot of spin that happens. And in my opinion, actually, good CEOs should manage the board. They shouldn't just be like, here you go, full transparency, like you know.
Yeah, I can see that, Ted, because, you know, the CEO is there day to day, understands the business, and can probably put things in context as to what is important to the business, what is critical versus what sounds real bad, but really is kind of a side issue. I don't know if you get what I mean by that, but, you know.
Yeah, they need to do that. And then I'll be honest with you, like I had a CEO that I really liked, and one of the things he was good at was just making the headwinds sound a little bit scarier and making the tailwinds sound not quite as helpful, so that the board didn't push the company into having these really hard to reach goals, right? And then he was able to basically deliver on the goals every year. And that's a little bit of a partnership, because the goals weren't like so watered down that it was like nothing happened. The company grew, but just because we, you know, whatever, grew 20% last year, maybe this year it won't be, maybe it'll be 15. And then lo and behold, it was 20, but the board's really happy because they only promised 15, you know, blah, 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 stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, that's what's that old saying, under promise, over deliver. You know, it's one of those always works, you know, in business. It's been my, you know, having run several companies and things like that.
But to be fair, technically speaking, is under promising a shade of lying? So.
Well, yeah. Well, I wouldn't call it lying, but I mean, it is, you know, it's not the whole truth and nothing but the truth, you know, but we're not in a court of law either at that point. You know, you just want to get things, you're trying to move the business along, right? So, I know where you're coming from. The other one I heard was that, we'll do it here momentarily, that he was looking a little bit at working with some hardware vendors and didn't keep the board informed on like building a chip or something like that, some sort of processor.
Jerry, I don't know if it is just me or others are also hearing some noise when you are speaking right now, or somebody else's microphone is.
I'm hearing the same. There's some distortion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to get one of those bandwidth warnings from Zoom.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll turn that up a bit. Maybe it'll be better. I don't know. Hopefully, it won't be quite as staticky. If it's real bad, I can maybe switch to a different mic or something like that. Okay. So anyway, one of the other things that I've heard is that you know, he was looking at working with some hardware vendors to bring in some sort of, you know, build some sort of AI chip and things like that. So I don't know if that's true. And finally, this one seems to be we'll go to the next slide. On the next slide, we'll get to kind of the big rumor about this. And this was some of Altman's comment about Q-star, which was AGI achievements. And he did make this comment the day before he was fired, where it says there Q-star is able to solve untrained basic math problems by reasoning in its own, without human guidance, how to perceive and solve the math problem. And as you guys probably do, or if you don't, math is typically considered to be a benchmark, one of the good benchmarks for reasoning.
没拿稳，没事，我来清楚。
Lou? So you know, if
我分你一半吧，我吃不了那么多。
Whoops.
Sorry, just forgot to mute.
Oh, that's okay. So, and it is, there's this, Jan LeCun has some quotes on Q-Star and things like that. And he pretty much says the other, maybe I can bring this up here. It's kind of cute. Yeah, you can read what Jan LeCun has said about this here. For those that don't know, Jan LeCun is the chief VP and chief AI scientist at Meta. He's also, one of the founding fathers of machine learning type thing here. And he says, please ignore the deluge of complete nonsense about Q-Star. One of the main challenges to improve LLM reliability is to replace autoaggressive token prediction with planning. So in other words, rather than, like what we do in ChatGPT is, typically we say, oh, okay, the person said A, B, C, so D follows and things like that. But when you're getting to mathematical things like that, that is definitely does not work. And that's why, in general, LLMs kind of suck at mathematics. You have to kind of break them up and tell them, well, take this and add it to this. And you have to instruct them kind of thing, rather than them doing it on their own. And then he kind of says, well, everybody's working on that. And then at the bottom, it's likely that Q-Star is OpenAI's attempt at planning. They pretty much hired Noam Brown of Liberis Poker and Cicero Diplomacy fame. And Cicero Diplomacy we talked about on this group before to work on that. And he says he's been advocating it since 2016, blah, 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 blah. So take that for what it's worth. Anyway, let's see. Just a little background. Q-Star training appears to you, from my reading, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, appears to use tree of thought reasoning combined with process reward modeling to score the various branches of the tree. So somewhere in algebra, deep down in your algebra days, you probably, had like a tree and, we were like multiplying this quantity and dividing it by that and that sort of thing. And somebody probably laid it out in a tree. And that's kind of how I was looking at this. I believe I'm correct in that. Somebody, if I'm not, please correct me on that. And they trained it via Q-learning, which is a model-free reinforcement learning network to determine the basic steps to reasoning to solve the problem, which sounds okay, great. So, it does math correctly, right? That should be better. And then there's a little note there about, where they got the name. They search and Q-learning gives you Q-Star. Okay, but here's the deal. So why is Q-Star controversial? First, Q-Star, as he said, is unable to solve these basic programs. Notice the untrained bit here, just kind of on its own, by reasoning on its own, without human guidance, how to perceive and solve the math problems. If we do complex math without human guidance, what else can it do? And this is the big one, I think. A lot of people say, if you can do that, you can learn to break cryptography. Because cryptography is largely mathematics. So if you can take a whole bunch of samples and work out what the mathematical algorithm is, then you've really got something. And you're touching into, it's not weapons grade, but I believe it's called like munitions grade or something in the DoD's book. It's been a long time since I've looked at the DoD description book. But you're moving into something that the government considers to be pretty weapons grade or munitions grade type of security level. And so the question is, did that get Sam Altman fired? I have no idea. But this is kind of my basic take when I took it apart.
Jerry, I don't understand that one. I don't understand how being able to solve basic math gets you to where you can learn to break cryptography. That seems like a huge leap in my head.
Yeah, it is, Roger. But I think in my mind, what I've read, people were concerned that it was the step that gets you down that path.
Yeah, it's a singularity point rather than anything else.
Patrick, can you explain that a little bit more?
Meaning they're afraid of sort of the explosive growth rather than the fact that it can just solve basic math, right? So if it can reasonably solve math, maybe it can the security game, cryptography game, it's all cat and mouse. And so they're extrapolating to say, okay, if you put, whatever, 1,000 A100s behind this, and you know math, maybe you can create some exploits that are worthy of attention.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
I think models are great in general to find patterns in things like language. So why not, for example, numbers? Like maybe primes numbers have some algorithm or pattern that is really easy, but we as humans don't see it. Imagine a computer, a model say, hey, or all the prime numbers have this pattern. So I can find any prime number that I want in any amount of time because I know the pattern. I think that's the way they are trying to say, like, well, cryptography works with patterns that an algorithm we haven't already discovered. Maybe these new models can solve these problems faster and break cryptography like before. For example, there are new algorithms that solve matrix multiplication faster than human-created algorithms. Why that's not possible, for example, for cryptography?
So I guess your point is that, if you can learn to do some of this complex math without guidance, what are the sort of mathematical breakthroughs could you make without human guidance also, I guess?
Yeah. At some point, AI will solve problems we aren't yet able to solve, and that will be good for us, but actually could be something bad for us too if we cannot make harder problems for the AI to solve. Maybe we will need something to fight against it. Maybe not yet, but in some future that could be a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how this gets us there. Anybody else any thoughts? Yeah.
For what it's worth, I'm not too worried about computers breaking cryptography. We already know that there's certain things that if you could build a big, accurate quantum computer because of the superposition properties, that certain calculations we could do. So like we know that prime factorization, there's Shor's algorithm, right? So you can do that a lot faster than you can do it on a conventional trial and error basis, right? But people have already devised algorithms that are harder than the ones in use right now that would be quantum proof. And then also, like, you could just go from whatever we're using right now, if it's 512-bit, just go up to like 4096-bit. And again, I'm not saying that a computer wouldn't be able to find patterns, but it's just going to take it that much longer and whatever. And so, like, I think people are resistant because it would cost like the Department of Defense money to change their encryption algorithms and to more frequently change keys and other kinds of patterns and things, right? It would cost them to build that infrastructure. But at the end of the day, I don't really see, like, I mean, worst case, right? Like, okay, fine, 4096, you can handle that too. I'm going to go to whatever, 1 million bit encryption. You can find patterns, but not before I change my keys. So, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
don't know.
There is also the harvest now, decrypt later, that is so common these days. When you register an incredibly amount of data that you cannot yet decrypt because you don't have the technology now. But in some future, this technology we are using now will be later easy to decrypt, like MD5 that you can easily fake MD5 now, but some time ago it was the standard. So I think people and maybe governments are afraid of this, that they are communicating right now about some algorithms that work well today. But if you register that information that you cannot use now, maybe in some future will still be of some value, like some codes 20 years ago maybe have still value now, for example.
Yeah, I guess that's true. If you currently send the plans to our best fighter jet, and somebody captures that, then they can just save that and wait till they have the ability to decrypt it. And if you're still using that jet, then they would have that. Yeah.
I don't dispute that. I just struggle with this. It can do simple math now, and so therefore it might someday break cryptography. It just seems like a fear mongering, really, to me. But
well, I kind of thought that too, Roger, but the more I looked into it, a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me, in the field, were really kind of concerned about this. So I don't know.
But I think you could have that concern. You could have that concern independent of Q-Star. If you just think about where's the future going, yeah, someday this is probably going to happen.
Yeah, the question is someday now, I think. You know what I mean?
Not if it can do 8th grade math.
Yeah. But it learns a little bit faster than I did in 8th grade math, and I had to repeat it 3 times. No, just kidding. All right, I'm going to move on here. We have one more slide on this, I think. Oh, do they? Okay. Yeah, this is just some references if you really want to go deep down into this. That last one, yeah, that's a video there. Q-Star, why AI is good and is a threat to humanity. Why AI that's good at math is a threat to humanity. If that's not a clickbait title, whatever. But I believe that's a YouTube video. You can watch it, and he goes through his rationale and things like that. Okay, that's what I had on the controversy and where we're at now. Questions, comments before we launch into?
I just wanted to comment on the math thing. I don't know if people saw the recent announcement by International Math Olympiad, a prize of $10 million for the AI machine, which can win the gold medal in the International Math Olympiad. And it's not just 10 million for the winner. It's like 5 million for the progress towards the award, and another 5 million and 5 million for the winner.
They are so dumb. That money is so lost. It's just a question of when, or did they mean within the next year?
Well, they did mention 2024 as one of the starting 2024 IMO.
Yeah.
International Math Olympiad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we know, as Ted can testify, people are motivated to do these things on Kaggle or what have you. For those that don't know, Ted and his team just won one of the fairly significant prizes on Kaggle because of their brilliance. So we're lucky to have them here.
Thanks, Jerry. Having said that,
I'm just embarrassing the hell out of Ted.
I'm not too worried. Those International Math Olympiad problems are hard. So it's not that.
Wait. What you guys did was hard, Ted. It's probably easy to you now, but what you guys did was hard too. So.
But I'm just saying, like, I participated in the Math Olympiad back when I was in high school, and and so, like, I think if you were given 10 problems and you just said use a computer to help you solve these 10, yeah. But I think basically, I haven't read the details on the parameters, Dave, but I the way I feel is like, okay, so imagine that you get some finite amount of resources and finite amount of time, and you have a trained model. Can you do as well on the 24 Olympiad as the first place team? That seemed to be the vibe of what I got from the announcement.
Okay,
right, but it's non-trivial, significantly non-trivial. I mean, here we're talking about.
I think you guys are
in violent agreement on that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Sorry,
what do we
I'm
move?
still
What do we
in
move?
between things, so maybe I didn't hear everything.
Yeah, no problem. Let us know when your son scores. Anyway, why don't we move on and we'll just jump back to happier days where we can go to the OpenAI DevDay keynote and get a little bit about what they're planning on doing. Okay?
Hey, Jerry, can we
Yes, sir.
talk about one other thing before we get into the
Absolutely.
the cool model stuff, which is more technical? But I feel like one of the other takeaways is not as much about Sam Altman, but is about those employees that we were talking about, that like 90+% of them signed this thing, right? So the two main interpretations that I've seen were that like Sam Altman had a really good relationship with these employees. They thought he was a good CEO, whatever, they wanted him back. And then the other interpretation I've heard is that like, in terms of like this comment about slowing them down and whether they're doing things that are more commercial versus more research, and you know, is any of this research risky? Like the fact that they were willing to go work for Microsoft, kind of the big interpretation I've heard is that those employees kind of want to have the ability to cash out. That's sort of a very, whatever, I don't know if it's pessimistic, but just a very basic like interpretation. So so the takeaway that I had was, regardless of why Sam had this issue and it seemed to me that at the end of the day, the money is what had the employees talk. And so even if right now, Roger, you're right, and that like Q-Star has no hope of breaking encryption, it seems to me that if someday some company, OpenAI or other place, does figure out something that could be dangerous, it seems to me that the employees are going to be voting with their feet that they don't want to slow down if it means that it's just going to squash something that, you know, is going to stop them from doing more things and getting more market share and whatever. So I don't know what other people have heard. If you guys have any comments, I'm interested what other people think about what this says about OpenAI employees, not just like the board and the CEO.
Well, one of the reasons I think everyone's, or at my generation, for example, want to work at OpenAI instead of Google or Microsoft, is because right now it's like, I don't know if this is the right word. In Spanish, we use like sexy, but it's really sexy to work there. Like you can work in the latest techs, even if you maybe don't produce as much money as you make in Microsoft or Google. You are in the latest research. You're researching AGI. You're going forward. And that for a researcher or a starter is like a dream. So if you say, oh, we are going to pay you twice at Microsoft or at Google, for example, but you will be a slow down. I think that was the kind of road that OpenAI was going to take when they fired Sam Altman. Like, we need to slow down. We cannot sold our soul to Microsoft. We have to keep a research team and be slowed down and keep AI safe. And all the people were like, no, I joined OpenAI because I like Sam Altman. I like the way OpenAI is taking. This is sexy. This is the most newer technology of AI, and in the whole world, I want to work there because of that. And if Sam Altman is not here, and Microsoft is about to give him a lot of money, a lot of resources, and want to invest in investigation, I want to change there. I think that's the general thought. Like, you join OpenAI because they are making the most progress that everyone in the world, and it's really nice to be there and develop the future with your own hands. I think that could be one of the reasons. Like, why just fired Sam Altman? Why so suddenly? Why without explanation? Just like 4 people decided, you're out. And everyone in OpenAI was like, wait, Sam Altman is basically the face. It's basically half the idea of what we are doing right now.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a change of road. Like, this is not the way I want to go. I probably want to go to another company to keep developing things that change the world.
Yep, good thought.
I
All right,
have
I'm
a
going to move
question.
us. Oh, go
Just
ahead.
one last question still on this topic. I saw an interesting comment again. Maybe it was on Hacker News, maybe it was on Reddit, but it's not clear to me how much Sam was involved in the actual technical work. I mean, obviously Sam won this round. He has the employees and the investors and everyone else behind him, but especially the employees. And what's curious, what this comment said that resonated for me was, back when we thought that Ilya, the scientist, was part of the coup, and Sam, who is kind of the business guy, it was on the outs, that the employees, who are all, as David said, they all want to do interesting research, they sided with the business guy. Oh, here's the analogy. It's as if all Apple employees had sided with Steve Jobs against Steve Wozniak, which is a little bit weird, if true, if that is true. That's strange.
Well, hopefully at some point we'll get more clarity as to what goes on over time, and people decide. But I don't know. It's nothing. We can probably guess a lot about it, but we'll never know until we get some more insider information on that. Okay, I'd like to move us along. Then, if we could, to the OpenAI DevDay, what they actually talked about right before, like the day before all this happened, and things like that, so we can kind of see where they are looking, what new technology they're bringing. If that's okay with people. Is that cool?
Sounds good.
All right.
Today, we are launching a new model, GPT-4 Turbo. GPT-4 Turbo will address many of the things that you all have asked for. So let's go through what's new. We've got 6 major...
Bear with me. I'm trying to adjust my screen here a little bit. Okay, there we go.
Things to talk about for this.
Is that better?
Number 1, context length. A lot of people have tasks that require a much longer context length. GPT-4 supported up to 8K, and in some cases up to 32K context length. But we know that isn't enough for many of you and what you want to do. GPT-4 Turbo supports up to 128,000 tokens of context. That's 300 pages of a standard book, 16 times longer than our 8K context. And in addition to longer context length, you'll notice that the model is much more accurate over a long context. Number 2, more control. We've heard loud and clear that developers need more control over the model's responses and outputs. So we've addressed that in a number of ways. We have a new feature called JSON mode, which ensures that the model will respond with valid JSON. This has been a huge developer request. It'll make calling APIs much easier. The model is also much better at function calling. You can now call many functions at once. And it'll do better at following instructions in general. We're also introducing a new feature called reproducible outputs. You can pass a seed parameter, and it'll make the model return consistent outputs. This, of course, gives you a higher degree of control over model behavior. This rolls out in beta today. And in the coming weeks, we'll roll out a feature to let you view log probs in the API. All right, number 3, better world knowledge. You want these models to be able to access better knowledge about the world. So do we. So we're launching retrieval in the platform. You can bring knowledge from outside documents or databases into whatever you're building. We're also updating the knowledge cutoff. We are just as annoyed as all of you, probably more, that GPT-4's knowledge about the world ended in 2021. We will try to never let it get that out of date again. GPT-4 Turbo has knowledge about the world up to April of 2023, and we will continue to improve that over time. Number 4, new modalities. Surprising no one, DALL-E 3, GPT-4 Turbo with Vision, and the new text-to-speech model are all going into the API today. We have a handful of customers that have just started using DALL-E 3 to programmatically generate images and designs. Today, Coke is launching a campaign that lets its customers generate Diwali cards using DALL-E 3. And of course, our safety systems help developers protect their applications against misuse. Those tools are available in the API. GPT-4 Turbo can now accept images as inputs via the API, can generate captions, classifications, and analysis. For example, Be My Eyes uses this technology to help people who are blind or have low vision with their daily tasks like identifying products in front of them. And with our new text-to-speech model, you'll be able to generate incredibly natural-sounding audio from text in the API with 6 preset voices to choose from. I'll play an example.
Did you know that Alexander Graham Bell, the eminent inventor, was enchanted by the world of sounds? His ingenious mind led to the creation of the graphophone, which etched sounds onto wax, making voices whisper through time.
This is much more natural than anything else we've heard out there. Voice can make apps more natural to interact with and more accessible. It also unlocks a lot of use cases like language learning and voice assistance. Speaking of new modalities, we're also releasing the next version of our open source speech recognition model, Whisper v3, today, and it'll be coming soon to the API. It features improved performance across many languages, and we think you're really going to like it. Okay, number 5, customization. Fine-tuning has been working really well for GPT 3.5 since we launched it a few months ago. Starting today, we're going to expand that to the 16K version of the model. Also starting today, we're inviting active fine-tuning users to apply for the GPT-4 fine-tuning experimental access program. The fine-tuning API is great for adapting our models to achieve better performance in a wide variety of applications with a relatively small amount of data. But you may want a model to learn a completely new knowledge domain or to use a lot of proprietary data. So today we're launching a new program called Custom Models. With custom...
Somebody say something?
No.
Oh, okay. You didn't want to stop or anything.
I didn't mean to.
Problem.
No, sorry.
No problem. Okay.
Custom models, our researchers will work closely with a company to help them make a great custom model, especially for them and their use case using our tools. This includes modifying every step of the model training process, doing additional domain-specific pre-training, a custom RL post-training process tailored for a specific domain, and whatever else. We won't be able to do this with many companies to start. It'll take a lot of work, and in the interest of expectations, at least initially, it won't be cheap. But if you're excited to push things as far as they can currently go, please get in touch with us, and we think we can do something pretty great. Okay, and then number 6, higher rate limits. We're doubling the tokens per minute for all of our established GPT-4 customers so that it's easier to do more. And you'll be able to request changes to further rate limits and quotas directly in your API account settings. In addition to these rate limits, it's important to do everything we can do to make you successful building on our platform. So we're introducing Copyright Shield. Copyright Shield means that we will step in and defend our customers and pay the costs incurred if you face legal claims around copyright infringement, and this applies both to ChatGPT Enterprise and the API. And let me be clear, this is a good time to remind people, we do not train on data from the API or ChatGPT Enterprise ever. All right. There's actually one more developer request that's been even bigger than all of these. And so I'd like to talk about that now. And that's pricing. GPT-4 Turbo is the industry-leading model. It delivers a lot of improvements that we just covered, and it's a smarter model than GPT-4. We've heard from developers that there are a lot of things that they want to build, but GPT-4 just costs too much. They've told us that if we could decrease the cost by 20, 25%, that would be great, a huge leap forward. I'm super excited to announce that we worked really hard on this, and GPT-4 Turbo, a better model, is considerably cheaper than GPT-4. By a factor of 3x for prompt tokens and 2x for completion tokens starting today. So the new pricing is 1 cent per 1,000 prompt tokens and 3 cents per 1,000 completion tokens. For most customers, that will lead to a blended rate more than 2.75 times cheaper to use for GPT-4 Turbo than GPT-4. We worked super hard to make this happen. We hope you're as excited about it as we are. So we decided to prioritize price first because we had to choose one or the other. But we're going to work on speed next. We know that speed is important too. Soon, you will notice GPT-4 Turbo becoming a lot faster. We're also decreasing the cost of GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K. Also, input tokens are 3x less, and output tokens are 2x less, which means that GPT 3.5 16K is now cheaper than the previous GPT 3.5 4K model. Running a fine-tuned GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K version is also cheaper than the old fine-tuned 4K version. Okay, so we just covered a lot about the model itself. We hope that these changes address your feedback. We're really excited to bring all of these improvements to everybody now.
Okay. Is that of any use to anybody in this group? Some of it is to me because of the lower cost. My bill at OpenAI can get kind of high.
I wanted to ask, someone here used a GPT-4 in Azure, because I don't know if the prices are really different in Azure against OpenAI API.
I don't use it, but yeah, that's a good question. Anybody know anything about that?
Because
I go just directly against the OpenAI API.
when I have a startup in OpenAI API, and on Friday when Sam Altman was fired, I got a little heart attack because it was like, oh no, what if the OpenAI API just go down?
Yeah.
The funny fact is, just a few days later, it actually went down. Azure, yes, I was really worried. And I thought, well, I have to migrate to Azure. It's probably a little bit expensive because it's for enterprise users and you have to get into a wait list. Probably it didn't, the price in Azure didn't went down like in OpenAI. So it's like a balance. You use Azure for enterprise and you use OpenAI for testing, for example.
Ah. Yeah, I've always just been using their APIs and their other facilities just direct on my OpenAI account. So
but Azure is more robust and it has a lot more of requests per minute that OpenAI API. That's something really great from Microsoft.
So they are adding value, in your opinion, to just by running it on their servers and their infrastructure.
Yeah, I think OpenAI infrastructure is also Microsoft infrastructure, because they don't have the power machines to power off all of that. I think it's Azure behind them, but OpenAI also have a lot of features that Azure don't have, like this new assistant API, but I think we will get into that later. So
Okay. Joseph asks, did everybody, if people saw in the chat there, the token cost, as far as I know, the token cost, yeah, the way that works is, we don't have words, we don't have sentences or anything like that. And maybe I'm being too basic here, but tokens are typically parts of words. So if you take apart a common word, like the word something or thing, that's made of some and thing, or maybe like thing, that would be 3 tokens. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but that's when they talk about a token and the cost, that's what they're saying. So if that was a penny for 3 of them, it's it's just broken apart and you pay per whatever those are. Let's see, you can change tokens for words. Yeah.
You could say that tokens are around between 25 and 33% more, a quarter to a third more than the number of words. So an approximation of how it works internally.
Right.
Yeah, but
of course, there's an algorithm to it.
Right. For
Yeah,
most tech,
unless you-
it's going to be a little more, but it's way less than double.
Yes. Yeah. And in some cases, it is just one-to-one on certain simplistic words and things like that. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you happen to do like Dr. Seuss, you're probably going to get closer to one-to-one.
Yeah.
But for typical stuff, that's what Dave was sharing.
Yeah, and
okay.
not only, even for simple things, what the use case that most commonly shared was, what is the third word in my sentence? And it would give not the third word, because it was already broken down into tokens and it was written in the third token and not the third word.
Yeah, that's a good point. So David or Joseph put that thing in the next word. So what do you mean by that? Joseph, if you want to iterate on that. Okay. All right. Well, let's see here. I was going to go into another one of these things.
I'm curious how they're gonna handle, or what they talked about with the context length, because when they increased it so much, I mean, it's just such a long-standing problem of, increasing the context length doesn't necessarily end in better results, or at least it can, miss parts, especially like the middle. So I don't have a, thought, but I'm just curious what they're doing there to help mitigate that issue. Because he said, in addition to extending it, they also did something that was going to help with that concern.
So I think what I read was the typical long context length solutions, and in particular Claude, but there are others as well who claim longer context. Claude is built in long context versus some different algorithmic or memory backed up long context solutions that are not part of LLM intrinsically. So when compared to Claude, GPT-4 apparently is doing, based on some studies that I've seen, and I can dig up and share those results, but it's able to do much better with respect to capturing the right response for the instruction given from a longer context, from anywhere in the context. One of the drawbacks for even 8K and 32K context was that the instructions would pay attention to the beginning or the end part of the context, and not so much in the middle. The longer the context, the worse it got. Like in Claude, the context before GPT-4 announced was 100K. After GPT-4 announcement, I think they've gone up to 200K or 175K, some big number like that. But going back to the point that you made, long contexts are now intrinsically part of GPT-4. How they handle it internally, they never release their architecture details, but they are handling it longer context and doing relatively a better job of attending to the majority of the context. And there are some studies, as I said, to point out exactly at percentage wise where exactly there are some issues, if at all, based on the benchmark, of course. There are some advances also that have happened to handle long context in the recent past. Llama 2 particularly announced going from 4K to 8K. And they talked about how they did that using, or maybe from 2K to 4K. I don't recall. I mean, they have different size Llama models. So maybe some went from 2K to 4K and some others went from 4K to 8K. But long story short, they announced some engineering or some enhancements, including multi-query attention and rotary position encoding. Those are some built in the Llama architecture that help it extend the context. And I don't know in terms of, so first one is to bring it longer context. The second one is to help make sure that all parts of the context get good attention. So, I mean, that's the very long answer, but I don't know if that helps, Matt.
Yeah, so if I could add a little color to that, there's a couple different techniques people are using, right? So one thing that people have found is that if you train a model on some number like 8K, and then you try and do inference on 32K, it just doesn't work, okay? But if you
In
read
all of
stuff,
this, we're lucky to have a partner.
Sorry.
If you read stuff about position embeddings, so like Dave mentioned the rotary ones, so the rope, and then there's the linear bias ones, people are squeezing a little bit. And in fact, I've heard people say that they think that the new GPT-4 model was trained on 64 because the performance seems to drop specifically when you get longer than 64. So it supports 128, but some of the stuff I've seen says it works really well up to 64, and then it doesn't work so well
for developers,
after that.
we're going to show you. It'll generate a few options. Who is going to drive this?
Your audio, I think, Jerry. I don't know if you have another thing playing in another window. So that's one technique people are using. And then people are doing different techniques to drive down inference costs. So, and by the way, I think like those embedding papers might be something we want to talk about in a future week. And so then some of the other inference techniques, so there's speculative decoding and other things. So those are some interesting papers. And that doesn't really solve anything, but basically if 4 times longer costs you 6 times as much, but you can cut the number of inferences in half, then it really only costs you 8 times as much. And so then it's just a question of market share versus Azure,
who is instrumental in making it happen. So I'd like to bring on a special guest, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft.
No, let's skip past this.
On your roadmap requires
tech on
Sorry, guys.
You don't want us to sit through the bromance stuff?
At Open,
yeah.
where we're headed, and the main thing we're here to talk about today.
I think Satya said something like, if anything ever happens to you, Uncle Satya's got your back, buddy.
Is he prescient, or did he know something was in the works? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll give you a whole wing. We'll give you a whole bunch of buildings, if you want.
That if you give people better tools, they will do amazing things. We know that people want AI that is smarter, more personal, more customizable, can do more on
I think I had a bad link, so I'm doing a little hunting here.
You'll just ask the computer for what you need, and it'll do all of these tasks for you. These capabilities are often talked in the AI field about as agents. The upsides of this are going to be tremendous. At OpenAI, we really believe that gradual, iterative deployment is the best way to address the safety issues, the safety challenges with AI. We think it's especially important to move carefully towards this future of agents. It's going to require a lot of technical work and a lot of thoughtful consideration by society. So today, we're taking our first small step that moves us towards this future. We're thrilled to introduce GPTs. GPTs are tailored versions of ChatGPT for a specific purpose. You can build a GPT, a customized version of ChatGPT for almost anything, with instructions, expanded knowledge, and actions, and then you can publish it for others to use. And because they combine instructions, expanded knowledge, and actions, they can be more helpful to you. They can work better in many contexts, and they can give you better control. They'll make it easier for you to accomplish all sorts of tasks or just have more fun, and you'll be able to use them right within ChatGPT. You can, in effect, program a GPT with language just by talking to it. It's easy to customize the behavior so that it fits what you want. This makes building them very accessible, and it gives agency to everyone. So we're going to show you what GPTs are, how to use them, how to build them, and then we're going to talk about how they'll be distributed and discovered. And then after that, for developers, we're going to show you how to build these agent-like experiences into your own apps. So first, let's look at a few examples. Our partners at code.org are working hard to expand computer science in schools. They've got a curriculum that is used by tens of millions of students worldwide. Code.org crafted Lesson Planner GPT to help teachers provide a more engaging experience for middle schoolers. If a teacher asks it to explain for loops in a creative way, it does just that. In this case, it'll do it in terms of a video game character, repeatedly picking up coins. Super easy to understand for an 8th grader. As you can see, this GPT brings together Code.org's extensive curriculum and expertise and lets teachers adapt it to their needs quickly and easily. Next, Canva has built a GPT that lets you start designing by describing what you want in natural language. If you say, make a poster for a DevDay reception this evening, and you give it some details, it'll generate a few options to start with by hitting Canva's APIs. Now, this concept may be familiar to some of you. We've evolved our plugins to be custom actions for GPTs. You can keep chatting with this to see different iterations, and when you see one you like, you can click through to Canva for the full design experience. So now, we'd like to show you a GPT live. Zapier has built a GPT that lets you perform actions across 6,000 applications to unlock all kinds of integration possibilities. I'd like to introduce Jessica, one of our solutions architects.
I'm actually going to move past this. There's a better demo here. But if I can find it, I think I've broken my links. It's more code-ish. Yeah, Sam doesn't really code, so let's pass Sam.
You're talking about when the other guy comes out and drives the keyboard, right?
Yep.
Many of you have already been building agent-like experiences on the API. For example, Shopify's Sidekick, which lets you take actions on the platform. Discord's Clyde lets Discord moderators create custom personalities for. And Snap's My AI, a customized chatbot that can be added to group chats and make recommendations. These experiences are great, but they have been hard to build, sometimes taking months, teams of dozens of engineers. There's a lot to handle to make this custom assistant experience. So today we're making that a lot easier with our new Assistants API. The Assistants API includes persistent threads, so they don't have to figure out how to deal with long conversation history, built-in retrieval, code interpreter, a working Python interpreter in a sandbox environment, and of course, the improved function calling that we talked about earlier. So we'd like to show you a demo of how this works, and here is Ramon, our head of developer experience. Welcome, Ramon.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning. Wow, it's fantastic to see you all here. It's been so inspiring to see so many of you infusing AI into your apps. Today, we're launching new modalities in the API, but we are also very excited to improve the developer experience for you all to build assistive agents. So let's dive right in. Imagine I'm building Wanderlust, a travel app for global explorers, and this is the landing page. I've actually used GPT-4 to come up with these destination ideas, and for those of you with the keen eye, these illustrations are generated programmatically using the new DALL-E 3 API available to all of you today. So it's pretty remarkable. But let's enhance this app by adding a very simple assistant to it. This is the screen. We're going to come back to it in a second. First, I'm going to switch over to the new Assistants playground. Creating an assistant is easy. You just give it a name, some initial instructions, a model. In this case, I'll pick GPT-Turbo. And here, I'll also go ahead and select some tools. I'll turn on Code Interpreter and Retrieval and save. And that's it. Our assistant is ready to go. Next, I can integrate with two new primitives of this Assistants API, threads and messages. Let's take a quick look at the code. The process here is very simple. For each new user, I will create a new thread. And as these users engage with their assistant, I will add their messages to these threads. Very simple. And then I can simply run the assistant at any time to stream the responses back to the app. So we can return to the app and try that in action. If I say, hey, let's go to Paris. All right, That's it. With just a few lines of code, users can now have a very specialized assistant right inside the app. And I'd like to highlight one of my favorite features here, function calling. If you have not used it yet, function calling is really powerful. And as Sam mentioned, we're taking it a step further today. It now guarantees the JSON output with no added latency, and you can invoke multiple functions at once for the first time. So here, if I carry on and say, hey, what are the top 10 things to do? We're going to have the assistant respond to that again. And here, what's interesting is that the assistant knows about functions, including those to annotate the map that you see on the right. And so now all of these pins are dropping in real time here.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that integration allows our natural language interface to interact fluidly with components and features of our app. And it truly showcases now the harmony you can build between AI and UI, where the assistant is actually taking action. But next, let's talk about retrieval. And retrieval is about giving our assistant more knowledge beyond these immediate user messages. In fact, I got inspired and I already booked my tickets to Paris. So I'm just going to drag and drop here this PDF. While it's uploading, I can just sneak peek at it. Very typical United flight ticket. And behind the scene here, what's happening is that retrieval is reading these files, and boom, the information about this PDF appeared on the screen. And this is, of course, a very tiny PDF, but assistants can parse long-form documents from extensive text to intricate product specs, depending on what you're building. In fact, I also booked an Airbnb, so I'm just going to drag that over to the conversation as well. And by the way, we've heard from so many of you developers how hard that is to build yourself. You typically need to compute your embeddings, you need to set up chunking algorithm. Now, all of that is taken care of. And there's more than retrieval. With every API call, you usually need to resend the entire conversation history, which means, setting up a key value store. That means like handling the context window, serializing messages, and so forth. That complexity now completely goes away with this new stateful API. But just because OpenAI is managing this API does not mean it's a black box. In fact, you can see the steps that the tools are taking right inside your developer dashboard. So here, if I go ahead and click on threads, this is the thread I believe we're currently working on. And see, these are all the steps, including the functions being called with the right parameters and the PDFs I've just uploaded. But let's move on to a new capability that many of you have been requesting for a while. Code Interpreter is now available today in the API as well. That gives the AI the ability to write and execute code on the fly, but even generate files. So let's see that in action. If I say here, hey, we'll be 4 friends staying at this Airbnb, what's my share of it plus my flights? All right. Now here, what's happening is that Code Interpreter noticed that it should write some code to answer this query. So now it's computing, the number of days in Paris, the number of friends. It's also doing some exchange rate calculation behind the scene to get this answer for us. Not the most complex math, but you get the picture. Imagine you're building a very complex finance app that's crunching countless numbers, plotting charts. So really any task that you'd normally tackle with code, then Code Interpreter will work great for you. All right, I think my trip to Paris is sorted. So to recap here, we've just seen how you can quickly create an assistant that manages state for your user conversations, leverages external tools like knowledge and retrieval and Code Interpreter, and finally invokes your own functions to make things happen. But there's one more thing I wanted to show you to kind of really open up the possibilities using function calling combined with our new modalities that we're launching today. While working on DevDay, I built a small custom assistant that knows everything about this event. But instead of having a chat interface while running around all day today, I thought, why not use voice instead? So let's bring my phone up on screen here so you can see it on the right. Awesome. So on the right, you can see a very simple Swift app that takes microphone input. And on the left, I'm actually going to bring up my terminal log so you can see what's happening behind the scenes. So let's give it a shot. hey there, I'm on the keynote stage right now. Can you greet our attendees here at DevDay?
Hey everyone, welcome to DevDay. It's awesome to have you all here. Let's make it an incredible day.
Isn't that impressive? You have 6 unique and rich voices to choose from in the API, each speaking multiple languages, so you can really find the perfect fit for your app. And on my laptop here on the left, you can see the logs of what's happening behind the scenes too. So I'm using Whisper to convert the voice inputs into text, an assistant with GPT-Turbo, and finally the new TTS API to make it speak. But thanks to function calling, things get even more interesting when the assistant can connect to the internet and take real actions for users. So let's do something even more exciting here together. How about this? Hey, assistant, can you randomly select 5 DevDay attendees here and give them $500 in OpenAI credits?
Yes, checking the list of attendees. Done. I picked 5 DevDay attendees and added $500 of API credits to their account. Congrats to Christine M., Jonathan C., Stephen G., Luis K., and Suraj S.
All right, if you recognize yourself, awesome, congrats. And that's it, a quick overview today of the new Assistants API combined with some of the new tools and modalities that we launched. All starting with the simplicity of a rich text or voice conversation for your end users. We really can't wait to see what you build, and congrats to our lucky winners. Actually, you know what? You're all part of this amazing OpenAI community here, so I'm just going to talk to my assistant one last time before I step off the stage. Hey, assistant, can you actually give everyone here in the audience $500 in OpenAI credits?
Sounds great. Let me go through everyone.
All right. That function will keep running, but I've run out of time. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Back to you, Sam.
Okay, that's kind of the end of the show. You can't go any better than giving people money. Questions, thoughts from everybody? Anyone?
There was some stuff in the chat about the custom GPTs, which we didn't spend as much time on. So I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that a little more.
Well, I, as a developer and kind of, I'm not really a data scientist, but when I need preprocessing of data, I usually use it OpenAI API or ChatGPT, for example, to complete to transform an Instagram post to a JSON of the name and important information and some kind of stuff. It was really helpful. But when the GPTs came out, I made my own GPT that can transform it without saying anything. You just type there or send the information, for example, a PDF of a menu of a restaurant and convert it into JSON. And when it finished, it uploaded to your own database with so less effort. I just spent like 1 hour programming the GPT, just trying to get it to work because I didn't know how to use the API for internet actions. But when I learned it, it almost does anything for me. Like I have some data, ChatGPT just process it, then search the internet, that upload it to the database. It's just not for the general people, like to make some games. It's also for developers to build their own assistants in really fast speed. It's actually pretty amazing. And the fact that you can put your own API calls into these GPTs without using the OpenAI API, it's just crazy. It saves a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, I could see that being a real time saver on a lot of that. That's interesting, and I'm interesting to hear from, because there are so many APIs out there, right? Every little tool we touch has its own API. If something could know about them, I don't know how many hours, days that I spent debugging, calls to APIs, tearing out your hair as to why this doesn't work. And I really didn't. I just wanted it to do something. I don't know about you guys. It's just a black box to me. I really don't want to know too much about it. I just want to put some data in. I want it to do something. I want it to give me my data transformed, and then I'll do whatever I'm going to do with it. You know what I mean? That sounds like this was enabling you to do that. So that's really interesting to me.
Well, I actually, because I have used it a lot, I sometimes I get to a barrier, and that was RAG. When I tried to use retrieval with just OpenAI, it was good for a little information, and when you insert some formatted information, some JSON, some kind of information, it doesn't really get to understand. RAG goes really wrong, this retrieval, and it tends to hallucinate more. And you can't really trust that data when you use their own RAG. So if you use other vector database like Waveit or Vectora, work a lot better than OpenAI RAG right now. I don't know in the future, but I think they have a lot of work to do for retrieval of OpenAI.
Okay. Cool.
So Jerry, one comment I had about custom GPTs is I don't know if people have different opinions about prompt engineering. Some people, have views that it's more sciencey, and other people kind of say it's more like just trial and error. I think maybe I'm starting over time to lean more towards the latter, towards like the trial and error side of it. But regardless of how you feel about it, it is work that somebody needs to put in. And so I'll just give a made up example, right? So like my wife is gluten intolerant. And so when we're looking online for recipes, there's certain things that I go through where it's like, you do a search and then like you see a recipe and whatever, like trying to find, good recipes, whatever. If somebody else has figured out like a really good prompt and it has a setup for a retrieval custom GPT that finds recipes and can do certain things, right? Like to me, that's a lot of value add, saving me the time of having to like tinker with it and figure it out. And so, it's not quite like the App Store, Android store, yet, but like if there's some way where ultimately people are like, yeah, Bob's recipe finder works really well. Or, people with, gluten intolerance, celiac recommend Bob's recipe finder if you give it this, check this box or include, the word whatever, then it's like, well, great. Well, why would I want to spend all the time refiguring this out when Bob has done this wonderful job and built a custom GPT? So I can really just see that there's lots of situations where I know how to buy an airline ticket. I know how to do these things, but if somebody has figured out a way to do the compare fares and to do this or to do whatever, how to find a good electrician, whatever, like I can just see that like somebody has spent the time to figure out the criteria, the prompt. I do see potential, a lot of value in these custom GPTs, because that's what they're baking in is the wiring, but also that system prompt.
Yeah, one thing I skipped, and maybe I shouldn't have, but anyway, they are building a GPT store where you can write your GPT, and then they'll go through some sort of testing, and kind of like the Apple App Store.
Right.
They'll go through some sort of testing on it, and then put it up there, and then it's like the Apple App Store. If somebody is doing like you were, Ted, looking for certain dietary limitations, if you will, on things, and somebody's found a better way to do that, you can buy that, add that to your version of GPT, right? And then when you look for something, I need something for my wife, maybe it'll know automatically, oh, I need to go down and use this GPT, and you instead of the regular one, or however you do it. So that is something that they're doing.
Yep. Yeah, it's a slightly different model, because basically if I spend $1 in OpenAI just doing completions on Bob's recipe finder custom GPT, right? I'm paying OpenAI $1 for all those completions because I did, whatever,
Right.
100 different, searches for recipes. And then they said, I don't remember what they said in the video, but 5 or 10 cents of that dollar is going to go to Bob.
Yeah. So it is an interesting, it's a whole nother, I'll use the App Store analogy just because that in my mind is what it is. It's essentially a GPT store or an app store. It's a task store. You buy it to do a task, So I think that's a real good use of technology.
I think that side's probably going to evolve. And it's a little bit different because the App Store, you think of it, whether it's actually what happens, but I think of it as the money goes to the developer and then Apple's like taking out a cut. But this is the opposite. This is OpenAI gets all the money and, we'll give the developer a cut,
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense. I mean, I would do that if I were at OpenAI, right? Because they don't care which custom GPT wins. They don't care if it's Bob's recipe finder or Alice's recipe finder. As long as someone is highly rated and people use it, OpenAI wins. Right?
Yeah,
just like Apple doesn't care what's the most popular game. As long as
that's true.
Somebody is buying it.
They make the money as long as you buy it through the App Store, right? Or something like that. Yeah, it's an interesting model. All right. Well, we're at, we're 4 minutes over where we are normally. And so that's about all I got. Is this a good time? Or does people have more questions and things like that or comments? I'm going to go ahead and shut down this